From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. E-commerce giant Alibaba Group announced recently that it is buying the South China Morning Post, or SCMP. It is the leading English language newspaper in Hong Kong. Joe Tsai is Executive Vice Chairman of the Alibaba Group. He said in a letter to its readers that Alibaba wants the newspaper to offer accurate and fair reporting that will improve global understanding of China. The company said this will help Alibaba's investors. The New York Times reported that Alibaba is paying about $266 million to buy the paper. It said this is a small cost for Alibaba, which has yearly revenue of $12 billion. Alibaba plans to make all the articles free on the SCMP website. Some analysts compared Alibaba's purchase of SCMP to Amazon's purchase of the Washington Post in 2013. The Washington Post is one of the most famous newspapers in the United States. The Wall Street Journal reported that Jeff Bezos, who founded Amazon.com, paid $250 million for the newspaper. It said the deal showed the newspaper industry's economic decline and the shift of power from old media to Silicon Valley, California. In December, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, the largest newspaper in Nevada, was sold for $140 million. Billionaire Sheldon Adelson bought the paper. He owns gambling casinos and is a major donor to the Republican Party. The Review-Journal sides with Republicans far more often than Democrats, reported the Washington Post. And the New York Daily News says the Review-Journal has a very large political influence in Nevada. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. The Apollo 11 command module, named Columbia, went on an historic voyage in 1969. It took astronauts Neil Armstrong, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins to the moon and back. It is on display at the Smithsonian National Air and Space Museum in Washington, D.C. But if you cannot get to Washington, you will be able to see Columbia on your computer or your smartphone. Digital scientists are scanning or taking pictures of the inside of the spaceship. They are creating an online model in 3 dimensions, or 3D. By looking at these photographs, you will be able to see the spacecraft the way the astronauts saw it. Scientists are using special 3D technology to scan it. They are not permitted to touch or climb inside the module. They use 5 cameras on long arms to take large 50-megapixel photographs. The thousands of photographs will be combined with the laser scans. All the images will be loaded into software that lets you look around the spaceship on a computer screen. The user will be able to see the Columbia both inside and out. The Smithsonian Institution says that the 3D technology gives a person ways to see things they cannot see at the museum. Adam Metallo is a 3D imaging specialist. He says that no one has been inside the module since it came to the museum. Now, he says, with this information, anyone in the world can view what it looks like inside this incredible piece of history. The virtual digital model will be available online by the middle of 2016. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Health officials in Brazil have declared a state of emergency in several states. They are also warning women not to get pregnant. Last year, about 2,400 babies in Brazil were born with extremely small heads. The babies have a condition called microcephaly. Microcephaly causes severe brain damage. At least 29 of these babies have died. In 2015, the number of microcephaly cases in Brazil was about 15 times higher than the year before. The U.S. Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, says there are many causes of microcephaly. The World Health Organization says it does not know the cause of the microcephaly outbreak in Brazil. However, the CDC says the link between a virus infection and microcephaly is being investigated. The virus is called Zika. Zika is spread by mosquitoes. Some babies in Brazil born with microcephaly had the Zika virus, while others did not. The CDC says that Brazil reported its first case of the Zika virus in May 2015. Since then, it has spread. In addition to Brazil, it has caused infections in other countries in Latin America, Africa, and Southeast Asia. The CDC says the common symptoms of Zika are fever, rash, headache, joint pain, and red eyes. Zika causes mostly mild symptoms in adults. However, in fetuses, the disease can cause severe brain damage. There is no vaccine or medicine to prevent or treat Zika. Health officials around the world are closely watching the situation. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Now that the Chinese government has relaxed its one-child policy, China's fertility industry could benefit. China ended the country's one child per couple policy late last year. All married couples are permitted to have 2 children. The world's fertility clinics or medical centers should see an increase in business. Many couples face problems when trying to conceive or become pregnant. Other couples would like to select the gender of their child. The government does not permit gender selection or advanced fertility methods. Middle-class Chinese couples travel to Australia, Thailand, or the United States for fertility treatments. These foreign markets could benefit from an increased demand for fertility services. A fertility clinic in Thailand told VOA that the number of Chinese patients has nearly doubled in the past 3 years. The same clinic changed its business process to attract Chinese clients. The clinic hired a Mandarin-speaking staff and printed its documents in Mandarin. Sue Channon works for a fertility clinic in Sydney, Australia. She says there has been an increase in inquiries from Chinese couples. She says their doctors and staff in Australia speak Mandarin. China's one-child policy became law 35 years ago. The birth rate in China was too fast and too high. It reached 1 billion in 1982. Because of the policy, China has nearly 1.3 billion people. That is fewer than it would have without the limits on family size. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. A new study finds that drinking coffee can help you live longer. The research comes from the Harvard School of Public Health. It says that drinking between 3 and 5 cups of coffee a day may prevent certain illnesses. The researchers found that coffee can protect against heart disease, brain diseases, type 2 diabetes, and suicide. Walter Willett is a nutrition researcher at Harvard and co-author of the study. Willett says the findings extend to both caffeinated and decaffeinated coffees. The health benefits come not just from the caffeine in coffee, but from compounds in the beans. Frank Hu is the senior author of the study and a professor of nutrition and epidemiology. He studies how food affects illness. He says the research adds to a growing body of evidence. It finds drinking a moderate amount of coffee may have many health benefits. One benefit is having a longer life. But he says moderation is the key. Andrew Maynard is a professor at Arizona State University. He told National Public Radio that the health benefits documented in this new study are small. He also said it does not prove cause and effect between drinking coffee and living longer. Rather, it points to an association or link. Even those involved in the research have questions. when National Public Radio spoke with study co-author Walter Willett, he said he is not sure how coffee is linked to certain health benefits. Willett says that if you like coffee, do not feel guilty about drinking it in moderation. If you do not like it, there is no need to drink it. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans. From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Luis Lopez Ramirez is a 30-year-old Honduran immigrant living in Washington, D.C. He has worked up to 16 hours a day at 2 jobs. He saves his money and rents a small room. He sends money back to Honduras to pay for the education of his 2 sons, whom he calls every week. The money he sends home also paid for the purchase of a small house in Santa Barbara, Honduras. Lopez Ramirez says he will return there someday and start a business. He left Honduras because the economy is terrible and wages are very low. The money he sends back to Honduras is an example of remittances. Remittances help build the economies of poor countries, and they lessen the burden on government aid programs. Experts say that remittances, or diaspora finance, can fuel growth and create jobs in the developing world. That money has a huge impact on global economics. The diaspora provides 16 times more money than official U.S. development assistance. That is $581 billion in remittances around the world every year. The United States Agency for International Development says that if the global diaspora were its own country, it would be the world's 4th largest nation. There are about 230 million people who live outside their native countries. Remittances have reduced poverty in countries like Ghana, Bangladesh, and Nepal. They are a major source of funding in many African countries, according to the International Monetary Fund. African migrants send at least $40 billion in remittances to African nations every year. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Improvements in electronics for automobiles are making them safer and smarter. Many new car models are designed to go a long way on just a little gas. But all of them are using technology that makes driving safer and easier. The new Ford Escape has technology that helps avoid crashes. The cruise control system changes the car's speed to keep a safe distance from other cars. It works by using electronic signals in the side and front of the car. These signals measure its distance from other vehicles. Drivers can connect to the electronic system through the dashboard or with their smartphones. A smartphone can start the car from a distance and find it from anywhere. Other companies are also developing technology to make driving safer. The Heedful Audio Alert System, or HAAS, warns drivers when emergency vehicles are near. CEO Corey Hose says crashes with emergency vehicles are a major problem. The device senses the sound of an emergency vehicle siren. It then sends a warning to the driver's phone or other connected device when an emergency vehicle is in the area. A company called Sober Steering has developed a device to stop people from driving if they have been drinking alcohol. The device can detect alcohol in the skin. If the driver's alcohol level is too high, it shuts down the vehicle. Sober Steering sells the device to companies that operate many large vehicles, like truck and bus companies. On the road, connected technology is becoming the way of the future. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Persutti. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Experts say one of the most important technologies of the future is drones. Drones are flying devices with no pilot. The number of jobs for people who know how to design, build, and control them is increasing. Because of this, several U.S. universities and colleges are offering degrees in unmanned aerial systems, or UAS. One is the University of Washington in Seattle. Christopher Lum is a research scientist with the Flight Systems Laboratory there. Lum helps students explore how drones can safely share the skies with other aircraft. However, the Federal Aviation Administration, or FAA, is creating new rules to control the use of drones. The FAA is the part of the U.S. government that controls air travel and air traffic. A new federal rule requires that all drones be registered by the middle of February. People who do not register their drones could face fines of up to $20,000. Changing rules could also present problems for students looking for experience as drone pilots. One problem for many schools is finding a legal place to fly the drones. Students at Blue Mountain Community College in Pendleton, Oregon, fly inside the college building used for sports. Lum says they also test drones inside a building at the University of Washington. He says it takes a very long time to get official permission to fly outside. He says it can take months. Lum and some of his students recently moved their research to Australia. Australia has fewer rules governing unmanned aerial systems. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Persutti.
VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. Scientists say a large percentage of bird species is in danger because bird habitats, or homelands, are disappearing. Traditional migration paths take birds through many countries. Some are not protecting the places where the birds stop, rest, and feed. The journal Science published a report by researchers from the Center of Excellence for Environmental Decisions in Australia. The scientists studied the migration or travel paths of almost 1,500 species of birds. They said that 91% of them passed through dangerous areas. The biggest danger for migratory birds is development. Building and paving now covers some of the natural areas where birds stop and feed as they move from one part of the world to another. Researchers say many of the small birds die along their migration route. There is no place for them to get energy for the next part of their journey. Countries in North Africa, Central Asia, and those along the coast of East Asia are having the most difficult time conserving land. The scientists say these countries do not have enough areas that are safe for birds. They say countries need to work together. They need to come up with safe stopover areas for birds that pass through their boundaries. Peter Mara, a scientist, told the Los Angeles Times that some habitats are changing. But, he says, more work can be done to make city areas safe for birds. He says small changes, like growing more native plants, could make a big difference. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. Choosing the right college is very important to students and their families. They look at rankings or lists of schools to make that choice. But rankings are not as simple as they seem. U.S. News and World Report uses information from more than 1,000 schools to create a list of the top universities. The Princeton Review and Forbes are also well-known lists that rank schools. U.S. News and World Report measures selectivity. Selectivity means that the school accepts a small percent of applicants. The applicants must have excellent academic records and very high test scores. The problem, says education expert Jonathan Rothwell, is that schools that are selective may benefit from better students. It does not mean that they provide the best education. Stacy Berg Dale and Alan B. Kruger are researchers. They looked at two groups of students with similar test scores. One group could have gone to the selective schools, but they chose to attend schools that were less selective. That group of students still made the same amount of money as the students who went to the selective schools. This suggests that it is the student, not the school, that creates the success. In 2013, the U.S. Department of Education announced a new plan for ranking colleges. It looks at the annual cost after financial aid, the school's graduation rate, and the annual salary for graduates. The Obama administration's goal is to give students information to help them choose the school that is right for them and avoid unnecessary loans. For VOA Learning English, I'm Jonathan Evans.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. Humans need less sleep than other mammals, and that sleep has better results, according to a new study. Researchers at Duke University put together information on the sleep habits of hundreds of mammals, including 21 primate species. They found that humans need less sleep than chimps, macaques, and lemurs. Humans spend a greater part of sleep in deep stages that help the brain restore itself. The study also found that a human's sleep is higher quality. A deep stage of sleep called rapid eye movement, or REM, makes up 25% of a human's sleep. In primates like lemurs or monkeys, REM sleep is less than 5%. David Sampson, the study's co-author, said the shorter, higher quality sleep make humans special. Sampson's research team found that humans can do well with about 7 hours of sleep a day. Other primates need as many as 14 to 17 hours of sleep. Sampson said human sleep habits started changing during prehistoric times. Human ancestors moved from sleeping in trees to sleeping on the ground. Better sleeping habits meant better sleep in a shorter amount of time. Our ancestors slept near fire and in large groups for warmth and safety. This could have allowed them to get the most of their sleep in the shortest amount of time. That left more time for other activities, like learning new skills. The study also notes that humans spend about 1/3 of their lifespan sleeping. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball. From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report. Netflix is a popular video streaming service. It is based in the United States. It streams or plays movies and television shows over the internet for a monthly cost. The service had been offered in 60 countries, including the United States. It recently began offering its service in 130 more countries around the world. The company says its goal is to be in 200 countries by the end of the year. Reed Hastings is the chief executive officer of Netflix. He says Netflix is in nearly every country in the world. He believes that this is the birth of a worldwide television network. India, Nigeria, Russia, and Saudi Arabia are among the new countries added recently. In July, the company said it would also target China. But now it says that plans to expand there later this year have been delayed. Netflix started in 1997 as a movie rental service. Movies were sent to customers through the mail. The movies and television shows were on video discs or DVDs. In recent years, Netflix has become even more popular as a result of its internet streaming service. Netflix is now also a creator of shows for streaming. Brian Blau is with the information technology research and advisory company Gartner. He told the Reuters news agency that there is a demand for Netflix outside its usual market. Netflix does not offer its service in China, but it has added simplified and traditional Chinese to the 17 languages it currently supports. Not all shows are available in all languages. For now, some are available only in English. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball. From VOA Learning English, this is the Education Report. U.S. President Barack Obama signed education reforms into law recently. This gives states and local communities more control over education standards and testing. Barack Obama says this law focuses on a national goal of ensuring that all students graduate prepared for college and future careers. The new education law urges the 50 state governments to limit how often and how many students take tests. The federal government will not be able to tell states how to measure the performance of their schools and teachers. Now, the states will have more authority in setting standards for the tests. The new law replaces the No Child Left Behind measure. It was approved in 2002. It called for many tests and standards set by the federal government. Parents, teachers, and lawmakers found that policy did not work. They said it gave policymakers in Washington too much control over the country's 100,000 public schools. Republican Senator Lamar Alexander is one of the new law's chief authors. He says this new law will result in fewer and better tests because states and classroom teachers will decide what to do about the results of the tests. The law's other author is Democratic Senator Patty Murray. She says the new focus will be on early childhood education. She adds that minority and poor children will benefit from the new law. She says it will give them a better start in their earliest years of school. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball. From VOA Learning English, this is the Health Report. Americans can eat an egg a day without feeling guilty. The U.S. Department of Agriculture and the Department of Health and Human Services recently released new dietary guidelines. They are updated every 5 years. The guidelines are designed to help set nutritional standards for school lunch programs and federal food aid. The new guidelines say a healthy person can eat up to 7 eggs a week. The U.S. Department of Agriculture says 1 large chicken egg has about 186 milligrams of cholesterol. Most of that is in the yolk, the yellow center of the egg. The report says the human body makes cholesterol on its own, so people do not need to eat eggs or other food to get cholesterol. The report provides other advice about staying healthy through diet. It calls for limiting added sugars to just 10% of calories per day. Natural sugars, such as those in fruit or milk, are not considered added sugars. The report also talks about saturated fat calories. These can be found in red meat, butter, cheese, whole milk, and ice cream. Calories from saturated fats should also be limited to less than 10% of total calories each day. The guidelines also suggest Americans move away from a diet full of animal protein and sodium or salt. The guidelines suggest a diet containing more fruits, vegetables, and nuts. The report also mentions the importance of physical activity in improving health. It says that physical activity can reduce your risk of disease. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. 3 university students in Santiago, Chile, have come up with a green way to produce power. They developed a device that uses soil to charge mobile phone batteries. The device can also power other small electronics. The engineering students got the idea while relaxing outside, taking a break from their exams. The batteries on their mobile phones were empty. One of the student inventors, Evelyn Aravina, noted that plants are living things and able to produce energy. Their invention is a small circuit board they call Ikaya. The Ikaya solved two problems for the engineering students. They needed to come up with a class project. They also needed an outlet to plug in their phones. The Ikaya captures the energy plants produce during a process called photosynthesis. That occurs when a green plant turns water and gas into food or energy as the plant is exposed to light. A plant uses only a small part of that energy to grow. The rest stays in the soil. One of the student inventors says the device changes the energy released from the plant into low-level power to charge phones. The Ikaya device collects the extra energy from the plant without harming it. It plugs into the soil and then into a mobile phone. The Ikaya is able to fully recharge a mobile phone battery in less than 2 hours. The inventors hope that the technology can one day be used for much bigger projects, like public parks. They imagine the power for the park's street lamps coming from its own trees and plants. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Persutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Science Report. Why is it that when dogs drink, water seems to go everywhere? But when cats drink, the water is usually contained. Researchers at Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia, have been studying why this happens. They say the mouths of cats and dogs are structured almost the same way. They found that cats and dogs do not have a full set of cheeks. This means they cannot create the force needed to drink, like humans, or elephants, or horses. But here is a surprise. The studies show that each family of animals has its own special drinking method. Sunny Jeong is the study's author and an associate professor of biomedical engineering and mechanics at Virginia Tech University. He says before they did basic studies of how cats and dogs drink, their guess was that it was about the same way. Instead, they found that cats and dogs are quite different when it comes to drinking water. Dogs must quickly move their tongues down into the water to build speed. They curl their tongues backwards and bring the water up and into their mouths. Cats do not bend their tongues. They use less speed and a more gentle action. They just skim or barely touch the surface of the water to drink it. Sean Gart is a researcher and Virginia Tech graduate student. He says cats are viewed as neat and dogs as messy while drinking. But that is because dogs have to move their tongues fast in the water. This makes good use of the way the water motion works. The research findings were published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. For VOA Learning English, I'm Ann Ball.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Economics Report. Zimbabwe recently announced that it would change to the Chinese yuan as its reserve currency. A reserve currency is a large amount of foreign money held by governments and financial organizations. It is used to pay their international debts. Patrick Chinamasa is Zimbabwe's Minister of Finance and Economic Development. He says China agreed to cancel about $40 million of Zimbabwe's debts for 2015. He also says the move was a sign of the friendship between China and Zimbabwe, a poor country in southern Africa. It is also a sign of the growing economic ties between China and Zimbabwe. China is Zimbabwe's largest foreign investor, with interests including technology, energy, and construction. Local economists say Zimbabwe has been flooded with foreign currencies since the Zimbabwean dollar broke apart in 2009. In 2014, the nation's central bank permitted traders to use the US dollar, the Japanese yen, the Chinese yuan, and 6 other types of foreign monies. Business advisor Philip Ciccone says most traders prefer the US dollar, the country's major currency. Zimbabwe's cost of living is about 60% higher than that of neighboring South Africa. China's president visited Zimbabwe recently and signed many economic agreements. This included a $1 billion loan for a power plant. Bank ABC chief economist James Wade says this action could result in more Chinese investment and more development. If so, Zimbabweans will profit, no matter what currency they use. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.